There's trilliums in Rattlesnake Point. I
Yeah.
remember I went there with the Niagara Air Group, all the cadet squadrons in Niagara. We did training exercise there, and every half an hour we were told, "Do not touch the trilliums. They're a $50,000 fine for picking
Wow.
them."
Yeah, I think they're like the flower of like Ontario's
Yeah,
flower.
yeah, the official flower of Ontario, and they're only grown in a few places, and Rattlesnake Point is one of them. If you
Okay,
pick
okay.
them, it's a $50,000 fine.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that. I'm glad I don't like typically have that like urge to pick flowers anyways. Like,
Yeah, it saves
right.
you money, it turns
you
out.
you keep living. But
Mm,
yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. Fifty
yeah,
thousand dollar fine. Wow.
yeah. We did scaling. We went down the
Okay.
escarpment,
Oh, cool.
on ropes, trying to do it very
Like
quickly.
like repelling.
Yeah, and then we would like everybody would pull everybody up to the top, so it was a bit like
Okay.
so you get pulled up, but the exercise, one of the exercises we were doing was trying to rappel down very quickly.
Okay. So did you have like a device of some like what did you
Yeah,
have?
we basically had the whole little harness even over the shoulder, and then we didn't have any pack on our back or whatever. We were doing like initial training, and then you just basically lean yourself over and then just rappel down,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
let the rope out, and yeah. So
I've only done that like once, and it's like, and it was like a guided tour kind of thing, because I think I'd be really scared.
yeah, it was kind of fun. It wasn't really my thing, but
That's fair.
yeah. No, Rattlesnake Point, I remember that. It was,
Cool. So how was like bouldering in Tennessee, Frank?
It was cool. It was my first time climbing outside. It's
Yeah.
definitely rough on the hands.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never actually done bouldering outdoors. Um, I'd like to, but the crash pad, I feel like it's like you do one or the other because like the equipment's so expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never done top rope yet. There's a indoor gym here in Orlando where I've done the auto belay, so you don't need
Okay.
someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's like a climbing group like
So
that you can like find I guess it's COVID, so it's kind of hard to find a partner. Like,
well, I have like a circle of friends and we climb
a
together.
bubble.
A what?
A bubble these days.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah, they're really good, and they've done like top rope and stuff. So maybe next time we'll try that. But I'm really hesitant.
Oh no, I think if you boulder, like top roping is like, I guess just the height thing. In terms of like falling, like it's so much because like you just get caught where you are versus like you fall all the way down, right? So like I find that's less scary, but I guess like the height thing, if you have a thing about
It's
height.
that, and it's trusting. Yeah, this bolt's not gonna come out. It's safe.
Yeah.
Sounds it.
It's a lot of trust. But if I see someone else go up first, it's like, okay, then I'll go.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
How high were these boulders?
Not too high. I would say
10 feet.
no, it would range like maybe 1 story to like 2 stories tall.
Okay. Still not high enough to get hurt.
Oh no, it's definitely high enough to get hurt. It's definitely high enough. Like at some point, the crash pads at the bottom, you won't die because there's padding down there, but at a certain height, it might still hurt if you land.
Yeah, so the crash pad is just like a nice like stretcher that's out there already for you.
Yeah, it's like
take you to the hospital on that sort of thing.
As well, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, at some point, my friends, they made it on top of a rock. But sometimes it's difficult to get down because there isn't a good way. They didn't tell me this. They just said, just go up there. And then once I made it to the top, they're like, hey, just wait. So we can show you the way down. And I was God. Oh man, I'm stuck here, but I gotta make it down.
I think the crazy people are the ones who climb buildings.
Yeah.
They get like there was this one the antenna had a ball and she got on top of the ball. I'm like, how the hell do you get down? It's easy to get up because you're right side up. How the hell do you get off of that?
Yeah. I don't know how people do that. It's scary.
Yeah, there's this.
To me.
I know that I forget his name, but there's this one guy who just free climbs, like no rope, up cliffs and
Yeah,
mountains.
Alex Arnold.
Yeah, I think that's him.
Yeah, one guy Joe
Hello.
Rogan had on his podcast. His
Hello.
hands were like monkey hands. They're crazy.
Mhm. Just being able to grip, right? Yeah, I feel like it's kind of nuts. Like, he climbed. Okay, like my point of reference is CN Tower, but I mean Yosemite, right? Like you got I suppose that's probably a better frame of reference for you guys. I think it's something like 3,000 feet. This guy like free climbed it, like so no ropes, nothing. It just like went up. And was like, I can do this. Like he did train, like he'd practiced beforehand with ropes, so like he knew how to do each stretch. But then he ends up like just doing it all in one go, and I can't imagine that.
No.
That's
It's
a
insane.
serious adrenaline junkie there.
Yeah, like you just have to know that your body's capable of it, and like that's not.
That's so much endurance.
Yeah. It was like hours of climbing. And I know like Beck showed me this one video of like people free diving. So essentially people like go down like, I don't know, a lot of feet into the water without like an oxygen tank or anything.
Oh, those guys are crazy. Like all the records are held by women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just basically get flippers and there's like a rope and they just dive down.
Okay.
And they go insanely deep, like 100 meters.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, it's all the freediving records are held by women, and yeah.
So I'm sorry. Do they like jump off a cliff and then go deeper in water, or they just
no,
swim
I think
out?
they like swim out and like swim down.
Yeah, they've got like a snorkel, and then they'll get ready at the surface, and then there's like a buoy with a weight on a line, and they just swim down the line, and that's how they measure, right? They grab something like a little like key or something that's at a set depth, and then they come back up to the surface, and it's like they hold their breath for insanely long times, like 7-8 minutes. It's yeah, and it's not just holding your breath. That's actually exercise down, and they have to power the ascent too.
And you can't go up too fast, or else you you're gonna explode your lungs. Like,
well, the thing with the lung damage with water is if you're a scuba diver and you're at say 10 meters and you hold your breath and ascend, the pressure at 10 meters is you'll breathe in a full lung under a much higher pressure, and then as you ascend, the pressure on your chest and on you becomes less, so it wants to equalize and it'll rip your lungs apart. So that blows a lot. If you've taken the breath at the surface, go down and back up, that's fine, because it's a full lung and then it gets compressed and then back up to the same size. Whereas if you take a breath at lower depth, have a full lung of pressure at say 800 pascals, and then it'd be 1200 pascals, and then come back up to the surface where it's about 1000 pascals. That's expanded, and it'll rip your lungs to pieces. It'll kill you.
Nuts. Oh my God.
So you in scuba diving and snuba and anything where you're breathing underwater, you never ever hold your breath. Okay. And the good thing is, like, I've done scuba diving and we do like practice emergency ascents, where it's like you ascend a practice ascent from like 10 meters, and you take a breath at 10 meters and you just breathe out. And it's weird because it's like you're breathing out and you're not doing anything. It's like you're breathing out and it's still getting like bigger. It feels like you're breathing in and out at the same time.
That's crazy.
Because the air is just expanding it expands quite a lot. So you can actually breathe out for a way longer time than you can imagine on an emergency ascent with a scuba tank.
Okay.
And you're like breathing out, and it's Boyle's Law.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stick to the land.
I know, right?
It's try.
I
Scuba's
do.
good too.
I do want to try it. I'm gonna one time at least.
Yeah, scuba's quite cool. It's a good experience as long as
Yeah.
you follow the rules. Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
And no, it's great. It's a great experience. The underwater world is reefs are amazing. It's entering a completely different planet. It's highly
I
recommend
matched
it.
with this like one dude on Bumble and like just like met up with him. He's like a diving instructor, and he said he like worked in Guatemala for a little bit. And there's like one, it's like a volcanic lake, and people had built hotels around the lake, but then the water level kept it rising. So all these hotels are underwater, so you can like dive down and go through like the hotels and stuff. Like that sounds nuts. Like that sounds really cool.
Yeah,
So
that's like the ultimate shipwreck.
Yeah, I know, right?
So
That's cool.
you can like
That's cool.
swim through and then like rise up in the lobby. Like I like to check
Yeah,
in.
exactly.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's pretty cool actually. Yeah, because like shipwrecks are in Florida, down in Key Largo. My brother had his scuba. I was too young, and I was doing snorkeling above. And the city of Washington wreck was only at like 4 meters depth. So what I was doing was I was taking a breath with the snorkel, swimming down, just like kick off the bottom to get another breath, and while my brother and my dad were scuba diving.
Okay.
And yeah, shipwrecks are awesome. They're brilliant things to go diving around.
Cool. Yeah, I think I'd like to try that out at some point.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
good
I mean-
idea for dating apps. Just like find someone with the hookups. Like, hey, you work there?
I know.
There's so much compatibility here. I just
Yeah. There was a woman in New York who calculated she had Excel spreadsheets. She calculated she saved 10,000 a year because every meal she was on a date, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the guy paid. She reckoned like 95% of the time the guy paid. She reckoned she saved 10,000 a year just
That's hilarious.
yeah. And she had an Excel spreadsheet, organized everything, and yeah.
I know. I feel like you gotta be careful with that though. People don't people don't love. Like I mean, I guess in New York, there's enough people that you can go through it and like never have to like see someone again, right? Like it's a big enough city.
yeah.
I feel like it'd be awkward if you like made someone pay for your dinner and never talked to them again.
Oh yeah, that's what she totally did. She was just in it for a free meal. And I love the way, like, all of these like BuzzFeed are like, oh, she's a genius. Oh, she's so clever. She's fighting the wage gap. And it's like, no, she's being horrible to these guys.
I did that for a little while when I first started using the dating app, like after I broke up with my ex. Like we dated for 7 years, so that was like before I started dating him, dating apps weren't really a thing. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get free dinners all the time. And like there was like people get mad. They're like, oh well, you shouldn't have let me pay if you didn't think we like had a connection, blah blah blah. And it's like fair, yeah.
There's a difference between actually like, oh, I'm going to go on a few dates and see, like, there's no obligation when you're on a date. That's the whole point. You're meeting someone, right? But
there's definitely people that I went on dates with, like, for the specific reason of, like, I want a free meal. Like, like I want to get to know this guy. Like, this guy seems desperate enough to pay for my meal. So like, that was mean. And I've learned.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, when you got Excel spreadsheets and the whole point,
I know.
It's awful.
I mean, good for her. If that's how she wants to live her life, good for her.
At least she's organized.
I don't see how that works out well for her though, because like I just don't see how that works out very well for her. Because at some point, just by default, of the thousands of guys she went on a date with, there must have been at least one decent bloke in there.
True. Yeah.
Like and oh well, I can get $10,000 of free food. Well, it's like, well, can you really put a price on actually finding someone who you have a life with? Really, I mean, it's not. I don't sort of really see how that works out very well for her.
I asked that as a question. Like, do you feel like Is that something you're searching for? Is like a companion? Is that something that you would put up high on your list of priorities?
Oh, mine.
Yeah, both of you.
Oh no. My priorities are fly, travel, make videos, have fun. I would like to higher on that list of priorities for me right now is to get some form of education.
Mm-hmm.
But I was more talking about for her. I mean, like all the women I know, it's like they're the happiest when they've got an amazing boyfriend and that they can't stop. They never shut up about. So it's like, yeah, I don't really see how she's not going to. That a woman who's Excel spreadsheeting for $10,000 of free food is not going to. I just don't see how that $10,000 is actually better than finding a decent guy that she would be happy with.
Different priorities, George. Different priorities.
Hey, she can do what she wants, but I just like I know from women I know like they're absolute happiest when they're in a great relationship. I mean, I don't know as many guys like that, but,
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm looking for that. But it has to like integrate with my current lifestyle. Like I'm trying to climb more and do stuff like this. Talk about like how to do life right and all of that. Yeah.
No, I think it's like fairly interesting. Well, I don't know. I guess like definitely a lot of my friends, especially my friends my age, are like in long-term committed relationships. I myself am like just single, and like I got out of a really long relationship, and so I'm not like necessarily looking for that, and I'm not necessarily sure it would make me happy. Like I don't know, man. Relationships are a lot of compromise, and like kind of, I guess you do have to find someone that like is compatible. Like that's huge, but like, yeah, I don't know. I have to say that I think there is. I guess it's like status quo wise. It's obviously like the world is easier to navigate when you're in a partnership kind of thing. But I think like it is. I mean, okay. I remember reading this one like little. It was like a. Do you guys know Terry Pratchett?
Nope.
He wrote like Discworld. He's like it's like he does fiction, like he does this fantasy series. But one time he wrote like an essay of like why Gandalf never married, right? Like in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And it's like I think there's a lot of male figures in history who never had like romantic partners. Like I don't know. Did Einstein have like a wife?
Yeah, he had a wife, but it was so he had he had to sign an agreement that she would not talk to him unless spoken to, because he didn't want her interrupting his thinking. In fact, he got married twice. The first one said goodbye, and when it was quite obvious he was going to win the Nobel Prize, so his divorce settlement was you win all the money in my Nobel Prize when I get the Nobel Prize. And she was like, that's fine, goodbye. And his second wife was more of a caretaker, but they were married.
Yeah.
No wild romance there.
Like I think it's not as like expected of men to put love as like as a big motivator for their actions, right? Like you can be great without being in love with someone. Whereas like I feel like in general, it's like, oh, women finding love, that's like the ultimate goal in a woman's life.
Yeah,
and
that's like the stereotype.
Right? And it's like for men, it's like I want to achieve greatness and like be successful. It's like I think women can do that too. And I think it's definitely not looked down upon, but like not as common for a woman to choose not to like be searching for someone, right?
Yeah, I mean, generally from what I've seen, and this isn't always the case, but generally from what I've seen is if you were, he's not subordinate and dominant. It's like the more leadership role in relationships from what I've seen is men generally have their life and a woman joins them more so. And if that's the sort of role that you're playing, you're joining someone, then yeah, your search for someone to join is going to be higher than someone who's like, oh, someone to join me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's like you don't look for someone to join you, but women look for a man to join. It's not, and there's a lot of compromise in that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's generally the men, in the people I know who are in relationships, is like the man's career is earning more and is clearly the priority. It's like, why would you prioritize school teaching over airline flying? It doesn't make financial sense, So you move to Toronto, and okay, she'll just find a teaching job in Toronto, or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a guy to join, then yeah, you're looking for love, whereas the guy isn't looking for you as much.
I see.
They're looking, but they're select, like, because the women tend to date economically across or up, whereas men economically date across or lower earning or lower in status.
That's the stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just a stereotype. That seems to be the majority of marriages. I mean, for example, one thing that breaks that is men are usually taller than their wife, but in the marriages, in the small percentage of marriages where the woman is taller than the man, they actually last longer.
That's a good statistic to know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look for taller women.
Yeah, but you're going to have a hell of a lot harder time getting them to marry you. But if she actually does marry you, the chance of you getting divorced is lower.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I some of that. So I find the sort of I don't have girlfriends. I don't go dating.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you though, George? That what is it? Something about height? You're less likely to get divorced if your wife is taller than you. Like,
yes.
Does that make any sense?
Well, empirically,
but I mean, just in your head, does that make sense? I mean, I understand that statistics can show those kinds of things, but I mean, does that make any sense?
Only from if you think that, for example, there's another, like, women. If the majority are men taller than women, then you can extrapolate that women find taller men attractive. But there's something else attractive about, like, the shorter guy that supersedes that.
And you think it's money?
No, maybe not money, but maybe they were together since kids.
Yeah, but then it's not really the height, is it? Like, the height has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's my point. In that small, in the minority of marriages where the woman is taller than the man, something supersedes the natural. Something supersedes a woman being attracted to taller men.
Yeah, but even that, I think that's I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. I mean, I think what you're pointing at is probably right, in the sense that if you ask lots of women, would they prefer a guy who's like the same height as him or taller? Like, they'd probably be like, yeah, taller, I guess. But I mean, I don't know. Even that's weird. I mean, people say all kinds of things when they're asked direct questions, but then they'll like meet somebody and they fucking, they're mad about the person, and I mean, the last person you were attracted to, do you have any idea why you were attracted to them in that first moment? I mean, it's like I find it's always like a really like complicated, like, fucking. Oh, I don't know. They're just hot,
Yeah.
Yeah,
in a way, like, it is somewhat mysterious individually, but then when you look at it anthropologically, at scale of a population, it's like, well, there seems to be a pattern here. For example, men tend to be a little bit older than their wives, usually. Not always the case, but in the majority of marriages, men are older.
So wait, just curious, is there a statistic that says, just like women being taller, is there a statistic if the woman is older than her male partner, it lasts longer?
I don't know about that one actually.
Okay.
I never read that. But I know. I mean, I'm 5'10", so I'm above average height anyway. But I'm not sure about the women being older. But again, when you get these unusual marriages, like Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, he's 15 years younger than his wife. He met his wife when he was 15, and she was his school teacher. Right? And that completely breaks any sort of natural mold, but they've been married 30, 40 years now.
How old was he when they got married? That's
in his 20s. Like they got married quite well when he was young, right? I mean, he has no children, but he has 9 step grandchildren. He's an odd guy, but the thing is, he's a really odd guy. I think he's even shorter than his wife too. It's quite funny. Bridget is, I think she's even taller. But yeah, I mean, it's so unusual. It breaks all the statistical molds. But again, he's broken a statistical mold. He's the president of a country.
Yeah, but like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I know what you mean, and like, but I'm very, very, very wary of just like statistics that
Yeah.
And then statistics offered without like any like kind of explanation about like, you know, how such and such is linked to such and such, and you know, like, I mean,
yeah, and
so like we can talk about, you know, women finding men who are taller attractive and stuff, and I think it's fine, like, but I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like height just rarely ever comes up when I'm talking to like people who are in relationships. Like, I mean, it's not going to be something that somebody goes, yeah, you know, that's why I'm really into the guy. Do you know, I mean, it's like I know what you mean in the sense that I like, but it's one of these things where if you ask a certain kind of question in a certain kind of context, where if you go, look, if you had to pick, would you pick a taller guy or a shorter guy? They're going to say taller, but like.
Yeah, it's also the difference between empiricism and rationalism, right? So rationals look for a reason, but whereas empiricists look at the result of the experiment and go, well, we don't know what you know, very often, like this is how we ended up with germ theory. It's like, well, washing our hands cuts down on the mortality rate of mothers giving birth. We don't know why. It just does. And well, now we can be rational about it and say, we can see that it's germs, whereas at the time they found that, they couldn't. So it's sort of the difference between empiricism and rationalism, where you've got, you know, the majority, and you look at the statistics, and it's like it's not a 2% margin. It's more like 80% of marriages where the man is older or taller or like something. Pick one, right? And it's like, well, what's the reason? Well, it's kind of different. You know, we experience attraction in a way that's sort of mysterious. We don't really understand we don't say, oh, she's this tall and he's that tall, whatever. It's just you like them. And I think something like we've got a very animalistic brain. We are an animal at the end of the day. I think what happens is we like someone and then we'll rationalize why we like them. So it's difficult to come up with an explanation of why you like that person. It's just you find her attractive or him attractive, and it's like, and then of course, then you know, if you're asking a couple, it's like, why are you with him? She's not going to say something that makes her look bad, like, oh, he's 6'2". She's going to say, oh, he's got such a nice personality, and it's like, well, yeah, he might have that, but the initial reaction may have been, oh, I like how tall he is. She wouldn't have had that conscious thought, and then
possibly, but
then rationalizing it backwards to ourselves is, oh, well, you know, he does something interesting for work and he's got such a nice personality, and then that's.
But like, I know what you mean, like, but I think like when you go back into the past and you look at stuff like, you know, people washing their hands and, you know, them not getting infected and stuff like that, like that's fine, you know, but I feel like for every one example where this kind of like rule of thumb that got applied and it turned out to actually reflect something, you know, genuine, like there's probably a million that we used to use that turned out to be just like complete nonsense. I mean,
Look at the Bible.
But never mind just the Bible. Even something like, I'm imagining like buildings. Most of the buildings that were ever built have all fallen down, and most of them probably fell down so soon after being built that like it was down to just the fact that they had a million different rules of thumb on how to make buildings that stayed standing, and most of it was not based on anything to do with the reality of engineering and physics and stuff like that, so it's
there's quite a lot of experimentation that gets you there, and then you end up with a rule of thumb that it'll work in these circumstances, but as technology or the load factor or whatever increases, then it goes beyond the envelope of what that rule of thumb would allow. I
think there's a deeper problem though, which is like when you're just looking at statistics. Like statistics don't interpret themselves.
No.
Data doesn't gather itself. It doesn't interpret itself. And it's like, so what can even look like a pattern that seems stable might not be a pattern. It's just that you think it's a pattern, and it represents what you think it represents. So it's like, even like, so for example, like I said there, if you ask a lady a question, like, which would you prefer, a shorter or a taller guy? Like, that's a specific kind of question in a specific kind of context that's producing a specific kind of response, and that is being interpreted as meaning something, which is, that, well, women in general are romantically attracted to taller men, but it's not necessarily what that kind of answer to that question proves,
Well,
and it could be something else about them that
who knows, because the thing is what you said there about kind of rationalizing is like just a specific, it's like what's the word, what's the word, anyway, it's a specific case of a broader thing, which is like when you ask somebody a question, they will give you an answer, but that answer is not necessarily representative of even what they think, and what is true about them.
Well, just curious, Ian, if a guy came up to you with a statistic and he was shorter than you, he said, "Hey, I know I'm shorter, but statistically we'll be happier." Would that work a little bit? Would you consider that?
I think what Danny's saying is very relevant because it's like okay, for me, like I said, that's not necessarily what I'm looking for. Like, I'm not like, oh, my main motivation is to find a dude to marry, right? So it's like that would affect my answer, wouldn't it? Like that would factor into it. So I might say like, no, it doesn't make a difference. Like, you're still short. It might not be like me being attracted to this guy or not. It's just that like you're trying to get at me being like, hey, like, let's get married. So like I definitely get where Danny's coming from in terms of like how do people get data? How does the question you're asking validly answer the question you're asking? You know what I mean? Like, because there's so many factors that can play into how a person responds to a question. So like, yeah, like what if I say I was looking for someone to like have a partnership with, then it would be like, oh, well, that's a fantastic point. Like, I'll give you a chance. Like, shorty, like.
There's motivation bias there as well. There's so many biases that go in, and then when you deal with large populations of men and women, well, then individuals will have motivation bias too. So yeah, I understand what you mean, Danny.
Like I get because I don't know. So I did some psych when I was in school, and like we did, like you code answers, right? And then you plug that into like a statistics program, and then it gives you like, are these things correlated? You can never really like say, like you can never, like there's correlation, there's causation, right? And they're not the same. It can be like, okay, most women who are happily married have shorter partners. Is it because why you can't say it's because he's short that they're happy. Right, but
there's also just a question, and like this. Sorry, there's also just a question, which is like it's an obvious sounding question, but Like, I don't think anyone really has a proper answer. What the hell is a happy marriage?
Yeah.
How do you measure a happy marriage? You know,
That's
like,
true.
and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, like the minute you ask that question and you just stop and go, okay, yeah, there's just no fucking way anyone has actually found a way to physically measure a happy marriage. And it's like, so it's like, well, then what are you measuring? How do you know? You know, like,
reporting bias there as well. You know, people have completely different definitions of
What
happy and unhappy, and no, I understand. My original point is that when you look at marriages just as a whole, very very plainly, we're not getting into the details at all. Most guys are shorter than their wives, but the type in the minority where the women are taller than the guys, they tend to stay married longer. Now, I don't know if that means they're happier. But the half-life of the marriage is longer. So what that means is again, there's a lot. It's very difficult to interpret specific things from those statistical findings, but I find that fascinating. Just to see that's how people act, and I mean, and another thing is like, and you find if you ask a woman this guy or this guy, and they pick this guy, and it's like, okay, you know, on an individual level, I think what's more proof that I think what proves that most women find men taller than them attractive is when you scale out to a whole population, you see that, in fact, most women are acting out that by marrying taller men. I think that's a little bit, sometimes if you scale out, don't get involved with the individuals and just look, well, the average height of, you know, the average is like, okay, that seems to be how people if it was like 51%, then it's like, well, there's no way that's
like, but most men are taller than most women, so like, wouldn't you?
Well, that would also play into biology too.
No, but the point is that when you're looking at that like population level statistic, the idea, well, most men are taller than most women would equally explain that statistic.
Yeah, and also what would explain men becoming taller over evolution than women is well, you know, we beat natural selection millions of years ago, and became the prime predator, whereas we defended ourselves in groups and we hunted in groups, so we became a prime animal and beat natural selection. So what then drives our evolution is sexual selection.
Is what? What drives is what?
What drives our evolution and how we evolve is sexual selection. So it's for example, female chimpanzees go into heat and they don't choose their partner. The biggest, strongest male intimidates and pushes the other males away from the incredibly violent, to get to the female in heat and impregnate her. Well, that is in a form of sexual selection, because then the bigger and stronger the chimp, the male chimp is, the better chance he has of reproducing. So his children then, the biggest of his children are selected for, the biggest of those children are selected for. Whereas with humans, human females cryptically ovulate. There's no way of us males, especially, seeing when a woman's ovulating. So women are the traits that women find sexually attractive in men are what get selected for. Because over lots of generations, hundreds of thousands of generations, then the unattractive men don't have sex. They don't pass on their genes. But the attractive men pass on their genes.
So
and then only the most attractive of those children pass on their genes. And you repeat that process again and again, and you find that men are a little bit taller than women. Well, that's driven by evolution.
So what you're saying is, like, we're This generation of men is the most attractive generation of men
so far.
so far.
The next generation will be more attractive.
But
Danny, I have a
even,
question for you. You're in a relationship, right?
you're asking me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is your girlfriend taller than you?
No.
But
No,
I
she's
do,
not.
okay, though I do agree with you the fact that, like, okay, population wise, yeah, men are taller than women in general. So
But
that could explain like the why women typically go for taller men.
yeah, well, I think I understand. I think there's a couple of things though, George, to what you're saying, which is like, for example, like a huge majority of our physiology would have evolved before we were even Homo sapiens. Do you know?
Yeah.
So it's straight away you have to ask questions about whether or not the minds of Homo sapiens function like the minds of Neanderthals or like Homo erectus or whoever the fuck came before that, and chimpanzees and things like that. So I mean, if there's any differences in how our minds operate, straight away it becomes very suspect to use explanations for something like chimpanzees and assume it applies to people.
Sexual selection would apply to sexual selection is just the bias throughout evolutionary time periods of the ones that get to pass on their genes through sex are selected for, where like natural selection is survival of the fittest. So you have 10 children, half of them die from either being eaten or disease. Well, let's say some evolutionary pressure was making people run faster. Well, the 5 that ran the slowest die. And so now you've only got, these 5 go and have kids, and the slowest half of those kids die. So evolutionarily, we get pushed toward running quicker and quicker. That's natural selection. Whereas sexual selection is present in peacocks, for example, the one with the male with the
big tail,
big tail, the biggest plumage. He gets
he's healthier, he's younger, he's more fertile.
Exactly, right. So you end up with and sexual selection is a well documented.
Well, I'm sure it is. I suppose my point is just like I think it's a lot harder than even I think a lot of evolutionary biologists want to make out, to link explanations of peacocks and chimpanzees to people. Like, so for example, the taller thing, like if it's culturally the case that men who are taller are considered more attractive, if that's a cultural phenomenon, then a woman who grows up in that culture will then turn around when asked in a survey that she thinks that taller men are more attractive.
Yes, one of the ways you can control for that is to compare cross culturally, and every culture in the world that's the case. Men are
not necessarily. It's like, because the thing is what can happen is you have these things called memes, and memes are replicators just like genes.
Yeah.
And memes evolve an awful lot faster than genes do. And so what memes can do is they can essentially, what one advantage they can have is if they adapt, or if they somehow, what would you say, overlap with something genetic. So if there is some kind of inborn genetic predisposition, let's say, that there certain kinds of physical traits are quote unquote more attractive because genes have coded for it. Humans have the amazing ability to override their genes. We don't really have to pay much attention to our genes if we don't want to. And so when you have, but unfortunately, like, memes are far more nefarious and much more.
They die quicker though. That's memes will can die quicker than genes.
Not necessarily. But I know what you mean, but not. It's a bit hard to say. But the point is anyway that, for example, if there's a meme, if memes can develop then cross culturally, that may have their roots in some kind of genetic predisposition, but ultimately it's still the meme.
Yeah. For the example you'd be making there is the meme is that taller men can protect you better. And if that's true, then it's not genetic.
Exactly. Yes. So it could absolutely be the case that, it's not in fact genes at all. It's just regular human women in many cultures making totally sensible decisions because they live next to a jungle and there's dangerous things in the jungle. So of course they're going to want a partner that is more capable of physically protecting what's going on. But that's not a genetic thing. That is
and of course the cultures and the tribes that would obey that meme and pass that meme on would live, and the ones that didn't would have a harder time living, therefore be outgrown and pushed out of it.
That sounds very Jonathan Haidty, and I'm not a big fan of that kind of thing. But yeah, you are right. But my point is I can't prove that stuff like this height thing isn't or like this is just one example that it isn't genetic. I can't prove that. But it's
But the practical upshot at the end of the day is my brother's 6'2" and he has a lot easier time getting a chick's number.
Yeah. Is that because he's just a fucking smooth talker, though? Who knows?
Oh, God, no. No, he sounds exactly like me. I'm far wittier than my brother.
Oh, God.
Yeah. He is not very witty. He's a nice guy, but he's not anywhere.
Can I just ask, and this isn't really an argument, but it's more just like I just find people who want to fucking explain human behavior with genes, I think it robs so much of the way people really are. If you think if you've ever been attracted to somebody, it's this really fucking amazing thing that's really complicated and really hard to understand. And it changes all the time. And it's then somebody wants to turn around and go, oh yeah, well, it's because some fucking ancestry or it's 10 million years ago survived when his buddy didn't.
I think the historical explanation is because I know when I find someone attractive or a woman attractive, it isn't logical. It's more primal. So for me, I actually think, well, yeah, that's more important because it's more important to me because it is genetic in a way, or at least far more fundamental than my surface level cerebral cortex thinking.
But do you not think even so even the kind of to swap it away from what women find attractive, but just to men, the kind of, let's say, body figure that men find attractive has changed multiple times, even in my lifetime. When I was a young child, it was very much
skinny models.
Yeah, exactly.
Models. Now it's girls with big booties and curves, right?
And so, this has changed massively, even in our lifetime.
There is a certain commonality throughout all these trends, and it's that they look fertile.
Is that really what you're seeing?
I don't know, because back in the 90s, it was these real thin models that looked like they were dying.
They didn't look fertile at all.
So there you go.
They were considered attractive, and that's the kind of people. Those are the kind of women
many
that,
people
would be on magazine covers and be the stars of movies.
Yeah, I think you're. I would disagree with you there, George. I think the reason why they were on the cover of these fucking beauty magazines and that was because that was the standard of beauty. And women. It wasn't men buying those magazines; it was women.
Yeah. Well, again, it's fiction, right? I think of those models as maybe they're more of a fictional version of the standard, because 90% of women couldn't have been that thin. Most people, in fact, more people are dying of being overweight now than being underweight. So
but
maybe it was like Harry Potter version of what people find attractive.
Yeah, but 90% of women don't look like the Kardashians either, but they're still considered, that is a kind of cultural meme at the moment where generally speaking, they're representative of a broad picture of what is considered attractive these days. You know, like
I personally don't find these fad things like anorexic women and Kardashians. I don't find them attractive at
yeah, that's
all.
fine. Yeah.
But like in general, that's kind of like where the trend is of like nowadays, like people like women getting implants, even women getting like butt implants, getting like boob jobs, like that's something that's happening because that's what is found to be attractive and like what will draw like the male like
I
a male
think
partner or something.
I think that's more to do with oh, hi Rebecca. I would, the implants and the overdoing it in a way. I think that's more to do with female competition than male attraction, because the thing is I don't find Kardashians or models. I look at them and think, oh God, no, like they look awful. But what, you know, if say the bigger the bum, the more attractive you are. If that's the theory, then women are going to try and, because women are trying to attract the most attractive man that they can attract, where everybody's trying to attract the most attractive person that they could bring into their life. So women are competing with each other for men, men are competing with each other for women in a way. So I think that would be more to do with women competing with other women to try and look better than the other women, rather than
possible. But I think that memes just pretty simply explain all of this, you know, and they just go, look, different memes spread at different times in the culture, and our culture is a very dynamic one. Things change all the time, so memes change all the time, you know.
Yeah,
and
I mean, certainly, what people find attractive in Japan is not the same
absolutely,
as attractive in France, England, or
yeah. Like, is it, the genetic thing? Like, it just. I mean, I don't know at what
Falls
point.
short because I think just like social constructs of beauty override what you'd be like. This is I'm naturally like. Do you think like there's no? I don't think there's such thing as natural beauty, in the sense that I like me looking at a man and being like you're attractive is not just my genes clicking on and being like this is what I find attractive. It's all these social like the way I've been brought up and like the cultural like the way the media is and like what is portrayed as attractive.
And there's the fact that what an individual finds attractive will change a lot, even for themselves in their own life, as their life progresses. As their life progresses, I mean, like
one thing. Sorry,
genes can't. I mean, I don't know at what point people just let go of the gene thing. I mean, you know, is it going to take a situation where what is considered attractive is just so atomized and changes so often that it just becomes undeniable? Like, but it's what people find attractive varies so much between people, even within, you're talking about the same people, even within their own lives. It's, I mean, it's changed across time. You know, like there was a time when men, you know, the most successful and, you know, what would you say? Let's say genetic, or not even genetically, but the most like kind of the most successful men in society, the aristocrats, would have looked like what we would say looked like women. Do you know, with the long fucking hair and the big frilly clothes, the makeup, you know, I mean, there's like genes cannot explain all of this variation. They just can't. Like
the gene, there is definitely a genetic component, because you know otherwise we'd all be bisexual.
Yeah, fair. But what I think that everybody is born with some. We're not a blank slate, like, you know. But
yeah,
like even, you know, it's weird that you mentioned sexuality. Yeah, I mean, even just the prevalence of, never mind, like even just the prevalence of all the different like kind of sexual preferences people have, like that as well can't be explained. BDSM cannot be explained through genes. You know, like it can't. Like, you know, I mean.
Yeah, well, if it could, then you'd find there'd be clusters of it.
Yeah,
right. It would be like the family trade. It would go down through. Whereas, I mean, certainly our sexual preferences are formed at an individual level. They're not formed at a genetic level.
But George, what you're not aware of is that there are clusters of it.
No, I don't want to be aware of that.
I asked my mom, and
Oh.
then I asked my grandma, and they all really liked being tied up.
And you're like, and Ian was
Kidding.
like, that makes so much sense now. So just
I'm not asking my parents anything.
you be surprised. But just to I'm trying to digest this. So for example, like we said earlier, the 90s, women being thinner, that was, let's say, a societal standard. Do you, because there's a difference between, okay, that's the societal standard, but do you think society accepted it though? Like we say this is what we want, but were people actually acting that out? And I think
they certainly weren't acting that out, because if they were acting it out, we wouldn't have more people dying of overweight, of obesity than starvation.
Huh?
Like more people now in the West die of obesity than starvation.
yeah, but
Right.
was that true in the 90s?
Well, it might not have been true, but it was certainly getting there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had as many people who are overweight, especially young people who are overweight. And now young people being overweight is one of the biggest health crises we're looking at in the next 20 years, because they're going to start getting diabetes not in the not too distant future.
Yeah, but I was thinking, like, in the 90s, I could see there's the element of female competition. Because, for example, in one culture, and best way to say would be like African American culture, there's a certain group of women that like really long nails. But then there's even a smaller group that like them really, really long. And I would argue not many men fantasize about that, like, oh man, her nails. And I think that's more so like how Georgia mentioned, maybe the women out competing each other.
Yeah,
it might not be a sexual
a little bit of
thing.
that effect in there.
Yeah, that might not be like a sexual element or finding a mate element. It's just another form of competition amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, like, is it competition or is it like self-expression? Like, I don't know, like, where at what, like, is everything that humans do motivated by sex? And like I personally don't think so.
No, that's
I don't
completely
think every
fair.
decision I make is like, oh, is this going to attract a man to me?
Yeah.
Like,
Certainly tattoos are more self-expression than a fetish.
but like anything, like any decision, has every decision you've made in your life been like in like motivated by like, oh, this is going to attract a woman to me?
You don't find this mouse pad
the
attractive?
guys- I think the guys, there are a lot of guys who they're like, oh, would this make there are a lot of guys who consciously think, oh, what would attract more women?
Yeah, but even
they're generally only successful with women.
But even that must surely only be a minority of their decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because like the kind of, I'm sure there are some men that this is true of, but I feel like most men will like choose their job based on things that have nothing to do with sex. They'll choose what they have for breakfast. They'll choose what car to drive. They'll choose what clothes to wear to work today or something. They'll choose what fucking bed sheets to have, whether or not they want to buy a PlayStation. Like,
I feel like a lot of that is also just aesthetics. Like, a lot of people just they have an eye for like aesthetics. They like nice things.
Yeah.
It's not always about like attracting some. It's more for personal satisfaction.
So just curious, because what if this happened on a societal level? Because, okay, my quick chain of thought is you have supermodels, and one of the factors why they're skinny is to fit the clothing. It's not really for the sexual attraction, it's for the presentation of the clothing they're wearing. And what if society kind of got those signals mixed? Oh, this is more for aesthetics as opposed to sexual attraction. Just like Ian brought up the fingernails. It's more self-expression.
Could be. There could be a factor in that. I think this is multi-factored for sure. There's no one reason behind how people behave in these. So certainly, what people find. So from my experience, I grew up with this accent in Canada, where women find my accent incredibly attractive and want to talk to me all the time. So if priority one was finding a woman, I'd have just, yeah, I'm fine here, thank you. But women here think I sound like an idiot. And they're like, oh God, no, we're not dealing with you. You're an idiot. And I don't look or dress like a Frenchman at all. And I really do see that. And
like Frenchmen more fashionable, like what do you say? Like they.
Well, it's just a different fashion. I mean, like in Canada, where I grew up, jeans and a t-shirt. It's like jeans and what t-shirt?
Yeah, like people here don't really care about dressing, but I find like, or I don't know, from like what I've like seen or how it's portrayed, it seems like men in like France or like Italy or whatever, like they like to dress up more.
Oh
like,
yeah,
put on
they spend a
and
lot more money on
everything.
clothes.
Yeah, button-up shirt.
Oh yeah, they spend a lot more money on clothes and you know, like glasses. Glasses are always round here. I think they look stupid. Whereas I like glasses that actually fit the shape of my face so that I don't get light coming in the side when I have to wear sunglasses. Whereas everybody here wears round, expensive glasses. I think they look dumb. I wouldn't wear them myself. But no, I mean, like men dress very, very differently to me. Jeans and t-shirt is all I ever wear, or maybe shorts, right? But yeah, no, here it's like doesn't fit the mold, not interested. I don't exactly know why. I don't exactly know. I haven't investigated all the reasons why women just absolutely hell no away from me here. But yeah, it's quite different because if I'm in Canada, women flock to women listen to the accent. They can't stop talking to you. And jeans and a t-shirt. Oh, cowboy boots. Oh, a real local. And like in Canada where I grew up, I'm different enough to be attractive, but not an outcast from society. Whereas here, no, I'm an outcast. So it is quite funny to find what people find attractive in different places, and so it's definitely like it could be genetic. But yeah, cultural. I mean, if it was genetic, then it would be like, oh, hey, I mean, everywhere in the world. But it's not, and so I don't know. It's particularly something as sort of mysterious to us as attraction. It is so many factors. It's impossible to, it makes me laugh when you see these guys on YouTube or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, and this is how you be attractive. And it's like, yeah, there's many ways of being attractive.
Yeah.
And it's so specific to each area. It's
yeah, I think that's like a really hard topic to like try to dig into or whatever, because like you guys have all been saying, it's just there's just so much variance in there. Attraction varies a lot in individuals and then in between individuals.
Yeah, I think that there are some common traits cross-culturally, right? People cross-culturally, Danny was saying about the aristocrats who dressed up like women 100 years ago. They were dressing up like women in high heels, and high heels were French aristocrats who came up with them, by the way, and long hair and like frilly clothes and all that. But they were still the guys in power who had nearly all of the money, and they were, sure, they looked different in Roman times, and they looked different during the Greek period, and they look different now. But you still see how the people who have the most money, the men who have access to the most money, they still have access to the most women. So they look different, but there's still a common,
But doesn't that just make sense though? I mean, wouldn't a person that has, is successful in some ways, whatever way success works in certain society, isn't it just a general thing that would be doesn't it make sense that people would find successful people attractive? That they would be.
That's exactly what I'm pointing out. It's not so much the look; it's the position that they've made for themselves, the success that they've had.
So you're saying the bourgeoisie is attractive?
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. But what I'm saying is like the thing that's common there, even though the men have looked completely different throughout history, is they're the successful ones, and and the women who've been attractive throughout history, they're the fertile ones. So I think the genetic component is a lot more vague than genes don't control what we see literally.
I feel like one thing that's like common among like all people is that like, you know, we're all in some way like looking to grow and progress, so we're naturally attracted to like whatever like person or whatever that we would feel like we would grow the most with them, or like get closer to where we want to be in life by being with that person.
Yeah, moving toward a goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So isn't there like a group of people who intentionally try to be complacent, even with let's say, their dating life?
What do you mean?
So some people don't want to grow.
Oh yeah, some people, they have terrible attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
what was your question?
So I'm guessing, isn't there a group of people who like date lower so they don't have to grow? Who try to avoid growth. They stay in their comfort zone.
Oh, like just like, you mean like settle for someone who will not like push them to be better because they're too afraid of like
all of that
to be better.
Yes.
There is also a remarkable ability for humans to be self-destructive as well, self-sabotaging and self-destructive. Specifically, if you've been through trauma and like have beliefs that you don't deserve, or feel guilty about something, people can be tremendously self-destructive. So yeah, like dating down to bring the drama into the life.
Just like, you know, some people will just find like, you know, that saying like misery loves company. So someone will be miserable and like find someone who accepts them for being miserable, and then just be miserable with that person.
Yeah. There's a lot of self-sabotage and bad attitude that's out there, but I'd say the majority of people aren't like that.
Yeah.
Are like what?
Are self-sabotaging?
No. The majority of people are not self-sabotaging.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed the last few minutes. I was just finishing washing up some dishes. I just wanted to say one last thing about the culture thing. Like the thing, the variable that I think gets missed a lot when people refer to like kind of the common cultural practices that you can see in like history. So you'll hear a lot of like anthropologists and stuff talk about this. You'll hear Steven Pinker talk a lot about this in his book, and it's like the mistake I think that's there is that throughout, for the overwhelming majority of human history, like every single society that managed to stick around for any period that was long enough for us to have any kind of historical record of them, it was not a society like the one we live in today. It was a society where people's independent opinions, preferences, ways of expression, thoughts, ideas, aesthetics, all of it was squashed. It was not allowed, and more than not allowed. Culturally, there was all kinds of things in place that prevented people from ever even developing their own individual preferences and stuff like that. So when insofar as societies in the past were like that, you would expect to see in terms of cultural practice, you would expect to see memes that are very, very good at getting themselves faithfully copied without being changed, like at all. So that's a lot of religion. And then you would expect there to be certain kind of basic genetic overlap, because there just hasn't been a lot of human like kind of creativity and effort that's put in to change any of these genetic predispositions. So that's what you see. You see men acting like evolutionary apes and women acting, I don't know what the way of putting it is, acting according to their evolutionary impulses, and then layered on top of that are in most societies some version of religious memes that completely subjugate any kind of individual creativity and individual preferences and stuff like that. Whereas in our society is very dynamic. It's very open. People are allowed, and their creative capacities, their creative faculties are not subjugated from day one at birth, And so in our society, culture and individual ideas reign supreme, because people are perfectly free to criticize their own predispositions, whatever they are, and change them and live their lives the way they want to, and find out what they like and change what they like as their life goes on and stuff. And so what you see in our society, especially and of course the thing is, we've only got one, broadly speaking, to kind of go off of in history, which is Western society, particularly the Anglosphere. And what you see in that society is huge variation across time, huge amount of individuals vary widely in what they like, the way they present themselves, who they're attracted to, what they want to spend their time doing. So my whole point with all of this is, when you look back in history and you see these common patterns, it's like, even insofar as those patterns really did exist, it's like it just doesn't prove anything as far as people today in modern society, because people in modern society, I mean, surely it's a matter of just daily experience for most of us that people are fucking so different, like it's just, people are just weird in so many ways, like wonderfully weird, but very weird, um
Yeah.
like, as I saw what is it? I saw a woman today walking down the street, and like, it doesn't matter about the details, but she was walking really funny, but she was clearly, like, as far as I could tell, she was doing it deliberately, whatever reason she had for walking in this strange way, but this is what she was doing, and it's like, if you pay attention and you're looking around, if you people watch, I love people watching, like, if you go to an airport, like, that's where you'll see fucking huge variation, is at an airport,
I used to do that too.
yeah, like, as in, you just see like the full range of human expression, human preferences, like, but anyway, sorry, that was just the last thing I wanted to say on that.
No, I definitely agree. I would say, like, more and more, like, our, I guess yeah, like, as like human, or like societal, social, like, evolution and human evolution, like, through all of that, or through social advancement. Sorry, that's like the best. That's the term, I think. More people, like, self-expression and stuff like that. Like, there's just been a lot more room for self-expression as like time passes, and you're able to see those differences between people more easily as we progress through time, whereas in the past, more people just kind of acted the same, even though they were different. Like, it was more, there was more like a group think, group behavior. But as people are getting to explore themselves more, like through social progress and whatnot, you're seeing those different expressions and eccentricities between people more.
So, I'm curious, do you think people are discovering and revealing these differences, or do you think they're kind of creating this novelty, these differences?
I would say that I'm not sure actually. I'd have to like explore those ideas more, but I feel like it's more that it's being revealed.
Yeah, like we've always had it.
Exactly. Like we've always had it, but we've just not showed it. Like there was no space in society before to express yourself individually, and like yeah, through social advancement, like there's more opportunity to express individuality. So you're seeing those eccentricities more.
I think.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, George.
One thing that just sprang to mind is something I've thought before is as society becomes, we become more individualistic. We have more freedom of choice. We have more choices to make. We have more options ahead of us. I think that dating and actually finding a wife or a husband is actually going to become harder and harder and harder, because the thing is now, it used to be men got a career. Like even if you go back, say 100 years, right? Men got a career and they'd find a wife and they'd pay for their house. And even in the 60s, right? Guy who works on the factory line at Ford, he'd have a wife, a kids, house, right? And the wife wouldn't need to work. So there was those gender roles, sure, but they were much easier to find. It's much easier to find a husband than a husband and a career. So I think for our generation and then the next, it's going to be more difficult to find a partner for life, because each person is able to do more things and in more places, and is going to have a much it's good, and everybody's going in their own direction. It's rather than, here's 10,000 guys who work at a factory, and here's 10,000 girls who went to high school with them, and it's the same direction. Whereas, if you're a woman with a career, or of course you're looking for a guy who has a career, and they're not parallel, and so it's harder. I think it will be harder and harder over time as social progress goes on. The more choices we have, the harder it is going to be to find a partner.
I feel like the more choices we have as well, like it increases like the number of and like just the more like self-awareness and whatever someone has of who they are, then it creates more like desires or whatever, like they have a better understanding of what they want, so they become pickier, whereas in the past exactly whereas in the past people weren't as picky, but now it's like people have a clear picture of what they want, so they're like, oh well, this person has to be this and this, and that for like both men and women. I don't know,
maybe the list of demands that men and women are both making on their ideal partner is getting longer and longer, and then that brings their dating pool smaller and smaller. But what I was referring to was like, if you've got more career choices or more life choices, whatever path you want to take, and as a man, and then women have career and life choices, they've got more and more. We end up in going about our lives in a more individualistic sense, because it's harder, because like if you're entering a partnership with someone, man or woman, doesn't matter, you need a common future, you need a common goal, and you need to make bigger compromise. You need to make compromises to live in the same place. Well, you got to live in the same city. You're going to live in the same place. It's got to be in the same city. And I think people are just. I think the compromises people are making in our generation are actually bigger than the compromises in the previous generation. And I think it's going to become more and more difficult for people to sort of make their lives parallel enough to be a partnership.
Yeah, like what comes to mind for me, it's kind of like those cycles of growth. So like you said, now we have a lot more options. You're given a lot more, so now you have to adapt and learn how to handle it properly. So maybe just like a simple example, in the past, you have like a male blacksmith and a female blacksmith, like, hey, we should be partners. We both do the same thing, so we should get married and, work this out. But maybe nowadays you have YouTube, YouTuber, female, she plays video games online, and a guy who does IT from home, like computer stuff. So they, even though it's two completely different realms, it's like we're gonna find compatibility by other means. Compatibility is gonna mean something different. Maybe.
Yeah, and I'm not. I'm just not sure how it works. I mean, for to be honest, the girlfriend and the living together thing, that's always been a bloody mystery to me. How people pull it off, and but
I think
I wonder if there is just a paradigm shift of like not like that. Like I understand like our biological imperative is to have like children and like pass on your genes. But what if, as a whole, human beings don't really need to do that because there's plenty of people doing that already, and like there's already such a big population. Not everyone needs to have a baby. Like maybe if, like there's just people who can. Like I do think like the idea of a lifetime partner is getting less and less common.
Same.
And I think like maybe throughout life you just you either like do it alone or you find partners at specific times in your life and then it ends and you find someone else. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe that's just gonna become more common. I think there's gonna be people who are more traditional and still do like. There's plenty of my friends who like, have bought a house or living with their partners or like gonna have babies in a couple of years. But like, I don't think necessarily everyone needs to do it, and I don't think everyone. It's not necessarily a big like that's not the thing anymore. That's not like the goal for people. I think
exactly
with individualism, it's becoming more like how can I like be the best, live my best life, regardless of like whether that's with a partner or not.
Yeah, I mean,
totally
I wonder what Jordan Peterson would make of someone like me. I cannot get my head around the whole girlfriend and live together, and I have my own life. I'm doing my own thing, and
that's fine. Like I mean, it's perfectly fine for people to have their own ideas about what they want and then just do what they want, and like that's fine. But I think there is an idea about being free that's very common these days, and I think it's a mistake. Like I think it's a misconception. Like there's freedom just in the sense of I can do whatever I want, and that's what it means to be free. The more I can do whatever I want, the more free I am. But the problem is that if everybody did that, nobody would be able to do anything because we'd all get in each other's way. It's like the example I've used before is like cars, right? So I could be free to do whatever I want with my car, in the sense that if I want to drive down the road backwards, at 40 miles an hour, like that's fine. We could say that the more free I am, the more I'm able to just do what I want with my car. But the problem is that if everybody did that, no one would be able to use their car. It would just be total gridlock. So what you need is a very, very complicated system of agreed and consented to rules that are up for debate always and can always change, that emerge very slowly. And then you end up with a traffic system, and the traffic system allows people genuine freedom. This is I think a less naive sense of freedom, which is like now suddenly people really can do what they want with their car.
It's more practical.
Well, it's more than that. It's that if you didn't have this, no one would be free to do anything with their car. As in it just wouldn't happen. We'd all crash into each other all the time. No one would be able to use their cars. And this isn't just true of cars. This is true of everything. Like this is why we have common laws and stuff like that. And it's
George, like you're just saying that thing about like, oh, I wonder what like Peterson say, or like what anyone's criticisms would be like for not following the norm. But I think like when people make criticisms like that, it's not that they're criticizing people who are living out of the norm. It's more a criticism about like trends trying to normalize things that are out of the norm in a way that it's so easy and it's for everyone. You know?
I mean, but by no means am I saying, "Oh, my life's easier." I mean, my God, it'd be so much easier if I had a girlfriend.
But there are like sometimes things do trend, like like I don't know, like people say, yeah, like, oh yeah, anyone can like quit their 9-to-5 job and like become an entrepreneur and an influencer, like something.
Oh, like
Yeah,
everyone.
Like it's more like criticisms against that. Like, yeah, there are all these roles that people play, and they're there for a reason. It doesn't mean like we're gonna dismantle them overnight or anything, but like there's always a room to like explore, and there's nothing wrong with those differences that do show up.
Absolutely,
that person is like
But-
listening, like have guidance of some sort, and like listening to their intuitions or motives.
Just in case it needs to be said, I was not in any way trying to criticize you there, George. And
No. I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
What you're saying,
Like, people should 100% like they can pursue their own lives however they want. And everyone else can do the same. But I suppose the point I was getting at, the reason I brought it up is there's this sense of being free where people just go, well, I want to be free of restrictions. I want to be free of anything that might cause me to compromise.
That's discipline. Basically, you're describing discipline, as Jocko Willink puts it. You get up at 4, just because you get up at 4. That's the rule. And then you go to the gym, and that's the rule. And all of these things that the regime that you discipline yourself toward gives you the freedom, genuine freedom, to actually achieve and actually do other things.
Well, I don't agree with his life philosophy now at all. But yeah, it's what I mean is that like
you need structure for it to function.
Yeah.
Like you need structure. I get what you're saying. Like, okay, freedom. Like some people think of freedom as like being able to do anything they want, right? But that's within a vacuum of like you're the only person existing. But like in the context of like there are other people in the world, and if they also want to do whatever they want, there has to be kind of like boundaries of like what people can do, and like everyone has to agree on it, right? Like I think like what you're saying, like, okay, like you're driving down the road. You could go if you wanted to drive really fast, you'd have to go on the highway. Like you can't just drive fast on a road. And like, I guess like in the sense of like, what is freedom, right? Like is freedom, like you can't have I just don't think you can have true freedom if there's like other people around.
Well, like you can, I think, when like it's hard to say. Like it's
So
like
I think
if you have like go ahead, Frank, if you want.
So I think like because you get like political, like anarchists or libertarians, you gotta pick which freedoms you want, because like you can't be 100% free. You're constrained by the rules of logic. You're constrained by the rules of math. You're constrained somewhat by gravity. So it's more like, well, where do you want to be free?
Yeah, well, you see, so it's like if you've got two next door neighbors, and like imagine there's like no laws or anything at this stage. You've just got these two people and they live next door to each other, right? And one of them wants to play the drums at like 3 a.m, and then the other one wants to sleep at 3 a.m. The problem is that like both of you can't do what you want, like, but there's a problem here, which is that like which one of you is the one that's getting in the other one's way? You know, and the answer is like, well, both of you are getting in the other one's way, you know, is equally as much. And so this applies to everything and everyone. And so the solution that sort of emerged very slowly in some cultures was common law and property rights. You know, like property rights around, you know, like a lot of the law is essentially just delegating out what you are and are not allowed to do with your stuff, you know, and what you are and are not allowed to do with other people's stuff. And it's all just there to, as much as possible, stop everyone from getting in each other's way, you know, in doing what they want. And it's like, this, so it's through this sort of like emergent framework, you know, where everybody kind of, and it's important that everybody agrees to it, you know, and it's important that it's always like up for debate and can be changed and things like that. It's only with that people can actually pursue their own choices, you know. It's only in that kind of a framework where freedom in terms of having more choices in life actually become possible, you know. It's this weird paradox, really, you know, where the ability to actually make meaningful choices only emerges from a kind of control that exists in society. You know, it's very strange, but
yeah, I can fly where I want to in an aeroplane as long as it conforms to the airworthiness and I have the license. Because otherwise, the punishment is immediate death if you don't.
Yeah, you know, and it's like planes are another example. Like, I mean, no one would be able to fly anywhere if it was just a case of no one was obeying any kind of laws around flying, you know, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you'd be terrified to get in a plane, because you I don't know the details obviously about flying, but you know.
So if
I mean-
people, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying, like, isn't that like the same thing though as like so no one really has, like, as long as you live in a system, there's no like true freedom, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like it's you start playing semantics. Like, how do you want to use that word?
If you commit to a regime and a discipline toward that regime, that regime can create a portion of your time that's free. So your weekends, your evenings, your weekends, whatever. Whereas if you don't commit to any regime, you're stuck in a quagmire of chaos where you actually can't achieve anything. You actually can't go away for the weekend because you've got no money. You can't, you know, so you commit to the regime of working 9 to 5, and that gives you the freedom to do what you want on the weekend. You know, it gives you that time, that portion of your life that is genuinely free. And that's what you're working for. And, you know, sometimes you say, okay, look, I need more freedom and less regime. So, you know, I need Friday afternoon off of work too. Or I need a new job that I work harder, but I get more time off or something. So
very paradoxical.
Yeah, you've got to well, it's not so much paradoxical if you think about it as you've got to work, you've got to create that.
Like freedom has a price. Like,
yeah, exactly. Right?
I wouldn't talk about it in terms of price. Like, I would just say, because as in, like, I would just say in terms of choices. You know, people want to make choices in life. You know, and the thing is that without some kind of order, without something to launch yourself from, you know, that everybody has kind of agreed to and consented to, nobody would get to make any choices, you know, like, and you know, in terms of work, I think it's the same kind of thing. I would say it's slightly different in the sense that, like, in order to make certain choices in life, you need money, you know, and so how do you get money? You know, you need a job, or you need somebody to give you it, you know, somehow.
Right.
But it's like,
yeah.
like
there are like rules that always have to be agreed upon by everyone in order to enjoy those freedoms.
Yeah, it's like there was a genuine problem before property rights were invented, where there's no way a free society like ours could have emerged.
Finders keepers.
Well, yeah, it just wouldn't have worked, like, because everyone would have just constantly been getting in each other's way, and there would have just been anarchy and violence in the streets. The equivalent of the medieval drummer and the medieval sleeper, they would have just fucking hit each other over the head out of frustration. But it's
combat.
yeah, well, like property rights were the way that genuine individual freedom is made possible. Without property rights, you just don't have a modern society. Like, it just can't happen. You can't have a modern sense of freedom. I mean, the houses or the places of residence that you're all in now, like, I mean,
what about like before like we developed all this stuff and like the more civil
Western civilization.
yeah, like Western civilization, like with indigenous communities and stuff, how did they operate freedom?
well, I would say there wasn't really a lot of freedom in a lot of those indigenous communities. I mean,
I think freedom is just different. So like imagine, okay, like I was saying before, like it's hard to be free when you're with, like in a group, right? In any sort of social setting, everyone's going to have restrictions on what behavior they can agree on, and like it's a social contract between those people in a group. Because I could say I don't want to have to, like, I want to walk around naked all the time, but it'll make people uncomfortable. So I'll go off, live in a cave, and I get to walk around naked because it doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. But as a result, I'm going to have to go out every day, like start a fire in the morning, go out, get food, cook it for myself, and like my time suddenly isn't free to do what like we would call like modern freedom. Like I can go on the internet, whatever, right? So like suddenly your time's constricted to these actions of like staying alive because you are not relying on anyone else, but like you are free to do exactly what you want. But like there is always that trade-off, right? And I think in the same sense, like in terms of like indigenous communities, perhaps they didn't have the freedom of, say, like they can just like you're always beholden to someone to like you have your role within the group and you have to commit to that. But at the same time, like perhaps, I mean, like I would argue that a lot of indigenous populations now are very much not free. Like they don't have the same like access to resources as like any, like for example, here in Canada, like indigenous people are put onto reserves. They don't get access to water. They have like very little access to food. The land that was like supposed to be theirs is now taken away from them. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think in terms of property rights, like for me, I think like there is that freedom, but I think it's also like to a certain subset of the population that it's given to.
Oh
and
yeah, like yeah.
that into account as like something.
Sorry, when Rebecca mentioned indigenous, I thought you meant like way back in the past. I wasn't making a comment about like whatever kind of indigenous tribes exist in some countries today. I don't know anything about the indigenous cultures in Canada, for example, or the way they're treated politically and stuff like that. But I think we would agree that even insofar as what you said there is true, like it's the very fact that these people aren't really treated properly, like that they're not really given the same kind of what would you say, opportunities. Their rights are not respected, in the same ways that other people's are, and that immediately strikes us as wrong. And it's not an accident then that these people's ability to make choices in life is so limited. Like the amazing thing that happens when people, if you have common law and you treat everybody the same, and everybody sort of and there's this huge emphasis in our societies on consent. People consent to laws. It's like if there's laws you don't like, you will obey them, you'll consent to obey them, but that's only because you have a general sense that the system that you live in that makes the laws is fair. And insofar as people don't think it's fair, those people tend to get very mad, and you end up with violence and protests and stuff on the street. But generally speaking, what's amazing is that like our society is more complicated in terms of all the different kind of restrictions that are there in terms of laws and rules and all this kinds of stuff, probably than any societies that existed in the past. And yet there are more choices available, generally speaking, to us than any people that have ever lived before.
Because there's that parallel between like the structure, the freedoms, and like it's
And
also like the
consent.
most practical or pragmatic civilization. We were able to do more because
That's
of
very
that.
interesting. I never thought of that.
Well, I mean, my situation, for example, the only reason why I'm allowed to live in France is because of the construction of the structure, the European Union, and because all the countries in Europe committed to a superstructure and aligned standards, it's the only reason I can live here. I have that freedom because generations before they decided for a superstructure and alignment.
Yeah, and then like Diddy, I think we spoke about this. This is like where we saw like the parallel between, let's say, the common law, the freedoms, morality, and like
and consent.
functionality.
Yeah, well, I would say consent. Consent is really important. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought like when you, I wouldn't say it's linear or it's the same amount, but when you increase one, the others increase as well. Like there's that
only with
relationship.
consent,
Correct.
only with consent, like because you could have a society that's really totalitarian where there's all kinds of restrictions on people and all kinds of rules and shit, and that has the opposite effect. People's choices are totally limited in life.
Yeah, everyone has to like voluntarily give up a freedom or follow this law or live a certain way in order for stuff to succeed.
It depends on what level of analysis you want success. Do you want the individuals to be successful, or do you want the society to be successful?
Well, I would say this is the Jordan Peterson answer. You want the individual success, which leads to your family success, which leads to your society success.
Yeah,
that's
not what's happening in China right now. If anybody doesn't fit the mold, they get disappeared and put into a concentration camp. That's genuinely what's happening in China right now.
They just increased the child policy to you can have 3 children now.
3? Oh my god! That's crazy.
For the longest time, and I think just recently, like a week ago or something, they increased it to 3.
Oh, because there was it was only until a couple of years ago that the 1 child policy was increased to 2, and it was like, no, you should have 2, not 1. And now it's 3. Okay, that's
yeah. Well, that's why it's so important that this is why it's so important that things need to be able to be changed. Because when insofar as you say that something is not allowed to be changed, a rule or whatever it is, or if it's not up to people, like if there's what you're basically saying at that point is, this rule is always and absolutely definitely right and will never, ever, ever cause a problem for anyone. And it's like, that's obviously completely ridiculous. Like, what you're going to do is like with China with that 1 child policy. It's like that was just never going to last. It just can't. And China, I don't know exactly. I don't know when they're going to fail, but like if they keep their society the way it is, they will fail eventually. It is unstable. Any society that is restrictive like this, that sort of entrenches certain rules, policies, etc., what they're doing is, in the long run, is they're entrenching mistakes. They're entrenching problems, and they're stopping people from thinking about how to solve them. And like, I don't know when they would fail. It's possible that in the next 10 years, China will have some kind of a political revolution or a cultural revolution.
I mean, there are already like small things like protests and whatnot, and like outbreaks.
Yeah, well, you see, people used to talk about the USSR in like the 50s and 60s, like it was never going to collapse. You know, like the USSR, like there's science fiction books that were written at that time that featured the US and the USSR like 100 years from that point as they were in the year 1960. You know, and like it just wasn't really thought that the US if you ask, like, you know, the quote unquote like smart people, the people who should know, like it just wasn't really considered that it would be unstable, but it is. All of these societies are inherently unstable, and insofar as China has managed to survive so far, it's because they've adopted various sort of free market tendencies and liberal tendencies, you know, because there's no way of sustaining yourself without it, you know, like
that's why my backup plan is Canada.
I think that's every American's backup plan right now.
But I'm preparing for it though. That's why I'm practicing my French.
You mean Quebecois, not French.
I forgot.
Do people in US talk a lot about like Canada as their backup plan?
I mean, it was definitely the joke. I think when Trump was elected or something, I think we all know this. The website that was looking into
the immigration website or whatever. It like crashed.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But that is something I'm seriously trying to work into my life and my career. Just have that maneuverability.
Would you say like US is more free than Canada?
Yes, I would, but okay. Because it's like how we were saying, you know, ideally you want more freedom, but there's also more responsibility. You need to be able to handle it. So there's a stability aspect. If people are given too much freedom, they can't handle it properly, and it leads to more instability. And so in some cases you might want to have a little bit less freedom. It's a little bit more order, less chaos.
I
give
think
people time to adapt.
I think the thing is about like the thing is about societies like free societies like the US and Britain and Canada and Ireland and stuff is an awful lot of fuss. If you look at them at any particular moment, what you'll see is a lot of fuss. You know, you'll see a lot of argument, a lot of, you know, what would you say? Let's just put it nicely and say lack of consensus. You know, and it's again it's very paradox sounding, right? But genuinely free societies that are stable will make more mistakes, but they'll make smaller mistakes and they'll correct for them, you know. Whereas the thing about unstable societies is that what makes them unstable, like the USSR, is that they will fudge and fudge and fudge and fudge until a really big mistake happens and it causes the whole thing to fall apart.
Yeah,
you know,
usually,
over the weight of all of their previous mistakes just causes the whole thing to come crashing down.
And like with the USSR, what you mean by fudge is like they choose not to adapt. They choose like to stick more to their core beliefs or whatever, what they think is working.
Well, like to be fair, I'm not an expert on USSR history.
I thought USSR was not a free, so like wasn't that like a dictatorship?
The USSR wasn't, and that's kind of my point. Is in a society that is not stable is actually one that you might see at any particular point as functioning relatively okay. Like, you know, you look at China at the start of COVID and they build a hospital in like fucking 8 days or something.
Oh, yeah.
And you go, wow, that's so impressive. China must be amazing, you know? And it's like, yeah, not really. And it's like, that's the wrong level of analysis, you know? You'll go on.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the reason why they got on top of COVID so quickly is because they lacked all the freedoms that we have. I mean, we're completely vulnerable to a pandemic because we're so free to move about. Chinese people can't actually move about their country freely. We have freedom of association. Again, that's something that they don't necessarily have in China. And yeah, I mean, we don't have a system already in place that kept people at home. Well, they do in China already. It's been there forever. So yeah, no, the Soviet Union, it was the Union. There was a lot of countries in it. Russia, after the war, Poland, all the Eastern European countries. They were basically ruled by Moscow. And when there was a problem, they just moved people around. So you've got like Russia today has got all sorts of weird ethnic groups in weird places that you think like, well, why the hell are Turks in Siberia? Well, they were just moved there to avoid a problem. So yeah, Danny's right. I mean, like if you just keep avoiding the problem instead of letting it get sorted out, then yeah, you get to a point where in 1991 it just could not continue. You had every country seceding from including Russia, actually seceding from the USSR.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Danny's
No,
about.
Danny.
Okay.
So kind of like with the recent trend with college degrees, I think that's an instance where people had like too much freedom, and it's like I don't know what to do, and there's a lot of factors like student loans, the exploitation of that, not preparing kids for college properly. But we saw what happens when people aren't ready for that much freedom. We have like too many choices. And we kind of know like the right way to do that now, or we know certain ways to correct for that. With the near future with people. All right, peace.
Have a good one.
I was just gonna say with the near future with people, who are we talking about with the life choices? I don't know, with the internet. It seems like we're gonna have a lot more freedom with careers and the way we socialize and all of that. I was wondering what would be like some concerns.
My concern would be that people withdrew. If you got too many choices, like oh, I've got 1,000 friends on Facebook. Well, like who do you actually go and hang out with regularly? So I if I had kids now, I would be certainly pushing them toward being social in person a lot more than because like it's easy to just withdraw lazily into, well, I've got 1,000 friends on Facebook and this, that, and the other, and I talk to the odd person here and there, but you actually haven't actually spent time face to face with someone. So, yeah, if I had kids right now, I'd be pushing them towards spending more time with face to face with people. Or picking. Like it was something I've said to a lot of people I went to high school with. They were like, I don't know what to do. They were coming to the end of high school and they're like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, I knew exactly what I wanted to do since my 8th birthday, fly planes. Right, that's it. Right. So there's a lot of ways of doing that, but there's a goal. There's a very specific goal with many, many routes toward it, or many ways of achieving that goal.
I have a question, like, because you said you knew what you wanted to do since you're 8, or
yeah.
Like, would you say your like family or whatever, like, there was more encouragement to like just pursue what you wanted, or did they always tell you, oh, like, do this? Like, were they trying to push you in certain directions?
They didn't need to ever push me toward flying as a goal. What they were trying to do was push me toward actually doing the schoolwork and the things that were not directly in line with that one goal, because I had no interest in school. I just did not care. It didn't have they didn't have an aeroplane there. Not interested. It didn't matter what the teachers said to me. I did not care. So my family were pushing me to do the other things in life that were not involved with that.
I was kind of like that too. So
yeah, what was your goal?
But I mean, my parents like still like tried to push me like they didn't really help me pursue what I wanted, but I was also kind of like that in the sense that I didn't like listening to teachers and like I didn't like school or listen to anyone.
Yeah, I mean, the thing
I mean,
is,
I loved learning, but I would just do everything on my own. And
oh yeah, that was me.
I wouldn't do my homework or anything. Like I just didn't care about teachers.
Yeah, no, that was me completely. I failed. I don't know how many courses in high school. I just did not care. I just didn't do any of the work. And they'd ask me, "Oh, you're stupid. You don't know math." And it's like, yeah, I know how to do math incredibly well. I just don't care about your stupid grade 9 stuff. But no, I mean, like, I don't know what I will do education wise from this point forward. Maybe a aircraft mechanic license. I mean, that would be fantastic. I'd be involved in that. I don't know if I'd go to university to study aeronautical engineering. I don't know what I can do because for me, the limiting factor is I just can't get a loan or financial support to do anything. So for me, that's the limiting factor. If I could get the money together, then I'd be a professional pilot. But that really annoys me because the reason why I've been refused loans is my parents don't own a home. Nothing to do with me. So that gets on my nerves. But yeah, no, it's. It is one of the, like, school was a disaster for me.
Yeah.
And Beck, you're gonna go back to school, maybe? Are you gonna go back to school, maybe? Or
What do you mean?
I don't know if did you finish? I thought you were in college, but you took a break.
Oh yeah. I mentioned that. So like basically I was like a bad student too. Like I never cared about teachers or anyone. Like I mean I actually apparently had like a learning disability, but I didn't know that. And like my teachers recommended my parents to like get me tested, but my parents didn't like believe in mental health or any of that stuff. And they're like, oh no, she's just lazy. She needs to try harder. So school was always hard for me, even though I liked learning. So in like grade 11 and 12, like I wouldn't like be able to pay attention in classes anyway, except like for a few classes that were super interesting. And like every other class, I would just not go to, and I would like read books at the library and do things on my own. And so there were like 2 courses because you need English in order to pass high school. So I didn't have that because our English teacher was just awful. So I was just like, screw this class. I'm not going to come anymore. And it was like also at 8 a.m. and I could never wake up that early. So I never finished high school, but then I did a lot of volunteer work, and then I kind of figured out what I liked. Like I thought I liked architecture or whatever, and I wanted to go into that. So then I took I finished English and math online, and I was like, oh wow, like I'm not stupid. Like this stuff is like I like this stuff. It's just that my teachers were bad at teaching it and whatnot.
Very common.
Yeah.
Especially amongst the mandatory credits.
Exactly.
They are the worst teachers.
And like sometimes they just like don't know how to teach things to you properly. Whereas like when I did it online, I could like take my time and actually understand everything properly and then do it. So I did really well. And then I started like a civil engineering program, like civil engineering technology. So not a university degree, but in college. And I was gonna like try to combine that with or actually it was like a joint program with like urban planning degree. So I was like, oh, perfect. But I didn't like figure out I had all those learning struggles still properly when I was in college. So I messed up and did really bad. And then I was like, screw this. I think I'm just not cut out for academia. And like, I just like dropped out of college and I worked for like, I don't know, 6-7 years or something, like 6 years. And yeah, I worked like a bunch of different things. I still did a lot of volunteer work, and I thought I was going to do my own thing and not go back to school. But then, like, I was always volunteering for environmental organizations, and like I did find some work like on a rooftop garden and doing interesting things. But like it was harder to move up because there was always that person like who had same experience and the degree.
Yup.
So it's like, okay, so I'm gonna go back to school, and then yeah, so I'm in university now,
Good.
and I have a year and a half left to go. And
Nice.
it's going well.
Yeah, good. So you got all the issues sorted out, and
Exactly.
what sort of extra help did you need?
For like, you mean in terms of like learning or whatever?
Yeah, did you need any extra help with to?
Well, so it was ADHD that my doctor diagnosed me as, and so I have like extra time accommodations, which helps me.
All right, extra time to read and makes sense. That's that little bit makes a world of difference. Then yeah, it's time well spent.
Mm-hmm. And it's just easier now because it's like once you know what you're interested in, then like it's just like you have laser focus. Like I could not focus on anything because I just didn't care, and like I would, even if there's like important like assignments, I would like do something else that's probably like equally as interesting, like I don't know, like make some kind of cool video or
So I do not know how many airplanes
I would do like really cool work on my own, but it had nothing to do with my schoolwork. So.
Yeah, I don't know how many airplanes I drew at school, but it was a lot.
Yeah, so I'm guessing like now your overall studying time is a lot lower because like you're interested in the topic.
Yeah, I mean, I still struggle sometimes because there are like some courses that have been a bit more like not as captivating. So like for those courses, it is still a struggle, but like the extra time helps for those reasons. So
yeah, I find that having a deadline helps.
Yeah, I need several though, because just one deadline, I'll be like, oh, perfect, I'll start it 2 hours before it's due.
Yeah. No, I've always found that deadline
project broken down into like 20 baby steps with deadlines, then I could do it. Otherwise, it just doesn't get done.
Yeah, it's like the alarm clock with like 20 snooze buttons. I'll get to it.
It's sort of my morning. My first alarm goes off, I go make a cup of tea, I go back to bed. Then my second alarm goes off, I go drink the tea, I go back to bed. Then my third alarm goes off, I go get dressed, and then go over to work.
I'm impressed that you can keep going back to sleep.
No, I don't go back to sleep. I just go like that, and then like it's not sleep. It's like this semi-state of occasionally I get 5 minutes and I wake up like what do I do? Like, but no, my mornings take a while for me to wake up, and it takes ages for me to get there. I've never been able to sleep properly.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been like night. I'm awake. I'm alert. I'm designing something, building something, doing something. And 3 a.m. That's when I start thinking, I'm tired. I'll go to bed, and then the world starts at 6 a.m. Unfortunately, so. Yeah, that's my life. I get home at like 5 o'clock, 5:30. I sometimes take a nap for half an hour after a shower because I get home, I'm filthy. I'm absolutely just rust everywhere. So sometimes take a nap for half an hour and then like sort of in zombie state for a couple hours, and then at night, boom, I'm awake, just laser focused. So yeah, I don't know.
That's not me anymore. I need sleep. I like sleep.
Yeah,
it's necessary.
I love sleep.
I love being asleep. Can you guys lucidly dream?
Lucid dream?
Yeah, like you can control your dreams and like you're
sometimes, but like like rarely, I guess.
I've come up with brilliant ideas while I'm asleep. They're brilliant.
Wait, do you remember them when you wake up though?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
because like I'll write them down or sketch them out, or like I've done numerous designs and solved problems like lucidly dreaming.
For me, it's before I go to sleep, which is annoying. Sometimes I'll have like those like revelations, like midnight revelations, and you're like, oh my god, and like, and then you start like thinking and you're like, fuck, I need to sleep.
Yeah. Actually, the only time that I don't really dream when I sleep like this, the only time I get like really, really good sleep is on my sofa, face down, lights on, middle of the day, and I'm cold.
Barely breathing.
Yeah, like I'm cold, and I feel cold, so I kind of go like that, and I'm face down, and then I'll get like 5 hours of like amazing sleep, and I won't dream. But then like if I'm in my bed, yeah, then I'll dream, and the sleep's not very good quality sleep. So there's been my whole bloody life I've never slept properly.
Yeah, interesting.
Just
yeah, what were we gonna say?
just curious, what kind of volunteering would you do?
I did a lot, like mainly with environmental organizations, because I was always like interested in that kind of work, and like I don't know, I felt like I was always like, even in high school, like I guess I was part of some clubs. Like there was like Model UN. I remember I was part of that, and I just was always kind of curious what was going on in the world, and like I remember no one. And like they didn't really push us to like learn about stuff as much, like of what was going on with the rest of the world. And like in high school, I didn't really have any friends who seemed to care about that stuff. So it's just like, okay, well, the only way to get involved is like through volunteering. And so yeah, there was like sustainable like food related organizations. That also did like environmental stuff. And then there was another organization that was like, that organization kind of made me realize I was into like, I knew I had like a very, like I was into buildings and like, technical drawings and like whatnot.
The architecture.
It was called Architecture for Humanity. So that was a really cool organization. It's kind of like, I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard of Habitat for Humanity, right?
Yeah.
So Architecture for Humanity was similar, except you had more, like the organization, they would get like local projects from like architecture firms and whatnot. And like they would work with volunteers to like build some kind of, like, I don't know, like pro bono, like, garden for a school in a low income neighborhood. So like kind of projects like that, which were really cool. And I was like, damn, like, city planning, like these issues are like really cool, and it makes such a big impact for like social change and whatnot. And so I really wanted to get into that kind of stuff.
So wait, so you would design the gardens with the buildings? So you would design the buildings too?
So they would be the main, like, they would like work with the neighborhood and see what they want, and then like see how they could make like a cheap, like a low budget, whatever they need, and like to improve their public space and have more activities for like people at the schools. And then since it's all like free work, they would get volunteers to help them build those. So we wouldn't do the design stuff, but we would kind of see how it's done and see how they're planning things. Like I got to be kind of part of, like, witness that whole planning process, which was really cool for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like I want to do that. And then that's how, that's why like I ended up going for that civil engineering technology program, but I hated it.
Nice.
It didn't focus at all on like environmental aspect of buildings and stuff. It was very like
bridges.
It was just very dry, and and it's just like, this is not what I signed up for, like what I thought it was going to be. yeah, so it's hard for me to focus, and then I just failed.
Ah,
But sometimes we learn more from failure than we do from our successes. Like,
Exactly.
you know, you found that no, you're not interested in that. You're interested
Mhm.
specifically in
Yeah.
the environment. You learn a bit about yourself too. So yeah, when you fail, sometimes you learn more.
Yeah. And I was so stubborn back then too. Even though I failed, I was like, no, I must do it again. And then I failed again. I'm like, why do I keep doing this to myself? I was like, I gotta just like quit school for a while and like figure shit out.
Yeah, I mean, there's something like when people say especially with the cost of education now, like a lot of people that went to high school with, they were like, I don't know what I want to do. My suggestion was always, well, don't spend thousands of dollars a year on something you don't even like. Go and try some things. Go and figure out what you want to do before you spend the money on education. Go and do it.
Right.
So, like, if you want to try scuba diving, go do a try dive. It only costs $50. If you want to, go volunteer and go and find what you want. And
I think
otherwise,
that's, like, honestly one of the best ways to learn. Like, co-op in high school, that is actually a really good thing. I would say that high schools have, because getting that like in person, like hands-on exposure to whatever you want, like helps you find out what you want faster. Like at least it did for me and most people I know. So
yeah, because like so many times, like what you study in school is not what you're doing on the
Exactly.
field, in the office.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
It sucks because I looked up architecture for humanity. I was like, oh, this is really cool. They're bankrupt. They're done.
They died in like, I don't know, it was like 2018 or something. They went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then I was starting school soon anyway. So it's just like, oh well. But yeah, I was with them for a while. We did really interesting things. And yeah, there was like a few other organizations like working with parks to organize events in parks and get more people involved in like outdoor stuff. And then I worked at a climbing gym. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like
Yeah.
the gym I go to. Yeah, part of the job is to climb. So, I'm just gonna spend a couple hours getting ripped, learning these new skills because I got to. Yeah.
I need to check out the gym there.
It's good. I enjoy it.
Nice. Yeah. Outdoor climbing is really cool too, if you've ever get into that.
Okay. Oh, you weren't here. All right. So that's like the first thing that came up last week.
Yeah.
I went because I live in Orlando, Florida. I went to Tennessee, a couple like 8 hours north. I did outdoor climbing for the first time.
No way.
Yeah.
In Tennessee?
Yeah, in Tennessee.
Okay, nice. Was it bouldering or
bouldering?
Okay, nice.
Yeah, top rope. I'm not ready for that.
Yeah. I think top rope is easier though. It's funny that like you're like, oh, top rope, no. Whereas I think bouldering is actually scarier because I mean you're closer to the ground, but like you're still falling. Like whereas on top rope you're always on that rope. So even if you fall, you still have like that like rope that's gonna immediately like hold on to you.
But there's so much trust in the rope and like in the bolts and stuff and the rocks.
It's extremely safe.
People say that. I know. Like after the first person does it, now I'm like, okay, then I'll go up. But I'm not gonna be the first guy. Nope.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I definitely want to climb. Like I can't wait until they open the borders. Like I just want to go so bad. I've been to Joshua Tree in LA, I guess. There's a lot of climbing out there in the West Coast.
Yeah.
But even in the East Coast, there's a lot. Like I was planning to go to Kentucky when the pandemic, like just before the pandemic started. Like I had a trip booked in March actually.
Oh.
And then it got canceled. But yeah, I was gonna climb in Kentucky.
What about in Canada? Is there no?
Oh, there's a
good
lot
place?
here too, but like I've been to most of the places, or it's not. I mean, no, Canada's massive, so I'm not going to go all the way to the West Coast because that's like expensive.
Yeah.
So it's easier to go south, whereas like all of the East Coast Ontario climbing spots, I've been to most of them, and it's all like the same. Like it's the same type of rock mainly. If you go south to the States, you get like more variety of rocks. Like you get like sandstone and
Yes.
granite, and I'm like, I want to climb that stuff. So, and it's just like, I like landscapes, so it's cool to see new landscapes.
Yeah, it was nice. Like we set up hammocks and just enjoyed the view. The temperature
Nice.
was perfect. It was good.
Are you guys all vaccinated now, by the way?
I need to sign up. I haven't done it yet. I'm incredibly low risk, so
Right.
yeah, they've opened vaccines up as of last Monday to all adults.
Right.
I need to sign up, and then they'll give me like I'm one of the last people who get vaccinated anyway, so I should.
Yeah, that's interesting. I thought in Paris it was like ahead, like more ahead, like everyone was vaccinated or something.
No, that is a lie.
They're targeting 30 million people, which is half the country,
Okay.
by the end of the month.
Yeah.
So for the first shot, and then the second is so they're targeting 30 million, and where they're starting to target is because now one of the few places left that it's spreading is schools. They're targeting high school and younger students as well. So, I don't know. How's it going in Canada?
Yeah, where the whole country's at 60% vaccination, I think, or that's what it was last I checked.
Not bad.
But it's just it's still mainly the first dose. I think US is like fully vaccinated now, right? Like everyone has gotten their second dose.
I mean, it's definitely a lot. It's really popular here, not because it's like for the wrong reasons, but it still works out.
Why are Americans getting vaccinated then?
Oh, to go to the club and the beach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not to be safe. It's not to be safe. The US's perspective was they're not going to stay home. We have to save as many lives as soon as possible.
Yeah. Well,
I haven't gotten mine yet. I wanted, because just listening to like Brett and Heather Weinstein, apparently AstraZeneca was their favorite choice, but that's not available in the US.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought like AstraZeneca was not one of the good ones because of like blood clots and whatnot.
So that's what happened. It was in Europe, and a study came out somewhat because of that, but the conclusion / analysis regarding the blood clots was incorrect. So that kind of caused this really bad reputation for AstraZeneca. And I think even in Canada, they had to review the studies again. It's like, okay, yeah, they're in the clear, but it took some time for the process and all of that.
Yeah, so I got my first dose, and I think the second one, I haven't gotten a date yet, but they said sometime in July. So
I'm surprised. Yeah, like here.
I've
Pfizer.
I get curfew at 9 o'clock, which is in 45 minutes.
You guys still have curfews?
Yeah, and people follow them, which is kind of.
People actually, I mean, I guess you'd get fined if you don't follow it.
The police just sort of drive around town and say, "Hey, go home." They don't even get out of the car. They just like go home, and that's about it.
I feel like police must hate their job, like right now.
Yeah, I think they do.
Mine still loves it.
It is what it is. I'm just gonna go for a walk for my last 30 minutes of sunlight for the weekend. And,
absolutely.
You guys have a good one. I'll speak to you next week
as well.
Right.
You guys, it was fun. Talk later.
Bye.